Hey, happy Tuesday, everyone. Welcome back to Morning Musings. My name is Don K. Preston. I am the president of Preterist Research Institute of Ardmore, Oklahoma. Uh, Yesterday, I forgot to mention the fact, this last weekend was one of those really crazy weather times in Oklahoma. Okay, so on Thursday, we had almost 75-degree weather. Pardon me. On Friday, we had sleet and snow and ice. On Saturday, we had 70-degree weather. I mean, Will Rogers used to say about the weather in Oklahoma, if you don't like the weather in Oklahoma, just wait around for about 30 minutes and it'll change. And I know that's the way it is in an awful lot of places, but I mean, it was absolutely hilarious. Thursday, 75. Friday, it was about, when I came to the office on Friday morning, which of course was about 3:30, it was, I think the temperature gauge of my pickup said it was 21 degrees. And then again, on Saturday, it was 70 degrees. Wow. Anyway, you just, you throw a coat in the back seat, you wear a sweater, like when I came to the office this morning, I go, well, how should I dress? And I checked my phone and what have you, and I was glad that I wore my sweater. Now, it's finally getting warm in my office, but you just simply don't know. Well, anyway, thanks again for joining me here on Morning Musings on this Tuesday morning. Certainly good for you to join with me, and I do appreciate that so very much. By the way, been getting an awful lot of wonderful private messages, and the comments span, a wide range of topics, of people who are brand new to fulfillment, people who have watched some of my past debates on the internet and have now come to believe in covenant eschatology, to those who just simply do not agree with anything that I'm saying, and that's fine, as long as I've said many times, as long as the discourse is respectful, courteous. It can be lively, it can be energetic, as long as it's not disrespectful, all right? So anyway, I do want to thank you for that. My subscriber list continues to grow, and I do appreciate that. And I want to urge you to be sharing my YouTube videos with your friends and your neighbors. I've heard from several over this past couple of weeks. People who have said, well, I've just now started watching you because a friend told me I really needed to tune in. Boy, I appreciate that. I really honestly do. Okay. Well, I told you last Thursday that we were going to look at Daniel chapter 12, Revelation chapter 11, as they relate to the fulfillment of Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following. All right? Now, Daniel chapter 12 foretold the great tribulation, Daniel 12:1, the resurrection, Daniel 12:2, the end of the age, Daniel chapter 12, verse 3, the abomination of desolation, Daniel chapter 12, 9 and following, and it foretold the time of the rewarding of the prophets, Daniel chapter 12, verse 13. Daniel was told, you, Daniel, go your way until the time of the end, for you shall rest and will arise to your inheritance at the end of the days. Now, mind you, the term is simply end of the days, at the end of days. It's not end of time. And as I've said many times, a specific word or term or phrase does not have to be used for the doctrine to be true, but it is significant, I think, that when we examine Daniel chapter 12, there's simply no way that we could read an end of time into the text. But I do want to take note of how many, pardon me, of how many time markers there are in this text. Now, why would I do that? Well, because if Daniel chapter 12 is parallel to Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following, and it is, since Daniel chapter 12 is about the resurrection and the end of the age, and Matthew chapter 25, 31 and following is about the resurrection and the end of the age. And if Daniel chapter 12 is parallel with Revelation chapter 12, and it is, as we shall see, then we need to pay attention to the time markers. And Daniel chapter 12 contains some really, really powerful refutations of the claim, time words don't mean anything to God. Oh, one day is with the Lord is as 1,000 years. 1,000 years is as a day. Unfortunately, many people read that. One day is with the Lord 1,000 years. And 1,000 years is a day. Sorry, that's not correct. That's a distortion of the text. So, pardon me, we have all these temporal indicators in Daniel chapter 12 that should, on any reading of the text, let us know that it's not talking about, number one, an end of time, and that should let us know when we compare it with Matthew 25 and with Revelation, or when we simply take the language at its face value, should let us know God can tell time. Watch this. Daniel chapter 12, verse 1. At that time, Michael shall stand up, the great prince who stands watch over the sons of your people. There shall be a time of trouble such as never was since there was a nation, even to that time. And at that time your people shall be delivered. Okay. We are told, amazingly now, by some former preterist, and certainly by many in the higher critical world, at that time has to refer to the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, I don't have time to develop that this morning, but simply to point out that in verses 29 and following, we have a transition from the time of the ascendancy of Antiochus Epiphanes to the time of the ascendancy of Rome. And it's the time of the ascendancy of Rome that is at focus at that time. And again, you can get my book, The Resurrection of Daniel, chapter 12, Fulfilled or Future, in which I have a lengthy discussion of the Antiochian proposal. But, pardon me. So Daniel predicted the Great Tribulation. Well, Jesus, in Matthew chapter 24 and verse 15 says, when you see the abomination of desolation spoken of by Daniel the prophet, let the one who reads understand, let those who are in Judea flee. Now listen, I don't know how words could be clearer than Jesus' words. When you, speaking to his 12 apostles, when you see the abomination spoken of by Daniel, well, let's see. Daniel chapter 12, verse 11. Daniel spoke, Daniel predicted the abomination of desolation that would lead to the Great Tribulation. And yet, ladies and gentlemen, some former preterists now tell us Jesus wasn't saying that Daniel foretold the Great Tribulation and the abomination of the first century. What Jesus was doing was, I want you to remember now, Daniel was actually predicting the events of Antiochus Epiphanes, who set up the abomination of desolation in the temple, and the atrocities that he brought against the Jews. That's supposedly the Great Tribulation. Pardon me. But remember now, we are told, what Jesus was saying. Remember what happened in the days of Antiochus Epiphanes. Now, he wasn't speaking about our day, but when you see something similar to what happened back then, that Daniel foretold for back then you need to get out of town. Well, wait a minute. That's not what Jesus said, is it? Jesus did not say, when you see something similar to what Daniel foretold. And make no mistake, ladies and gentlemen, Jesus had the words in his vocabulary for something like, something similar. He had those words available to him, but he did not use them. He said, when you see what Daniel spoke about, when you see what Daniel predicted, then flee. But you see, unless they could see, pun intended, what Daniel foretold, then they literally were not seeing what Daniel foretold. Now, are there similarities between what Daniel, or between what happened in the days of Antiochus Epiphanes and the days of Jesus? Well, no one denies that. I don't know of anybody that denies that. But I want you to notice, ladies and gentlemen, boy, I tell you what, oh my goodness, it's just so important for me to develop these concepts and these facts from Daniel. Notice, Daniel was told that at that time there shall be great tribulation, such as has never been since there was a nation, even to that time. Now, ladies and gentlemen, these words completely destroy the idea that the Great Tribulation happened in the time of Antiochus Epiphanes. How do I know that? Well, because Jesus said there will be great tribulation such as has never been since there were a nation up to that time. Where here's the undeniable historical reality. The events of the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, while they were absolutely horrible, I'm not negating anything. I'm not depreciating how horrific it was. But the pogrom under Antiochus pales in significance when compared with 586 BC. In 586 BC, Jerusalem was completely destroyed. The temple was completely destroyed. And as Brent Petrie, in his book, Jesus, the Tribulation and the End of Exile, points out, this is the Achilles heel of the Antiochian posit, because Jerusalem was not destroyed anything like it was in 586 BC. The temple was desecrated, to be sure, but it was not destroyed in 586 BC. Oh, and by the way, the temple was not destroyed by Antiochus. The city was not destroyed by Antiochus, but in the days of the first century, in the AD 70 destruction, it was destroyed everything utterly wiped out. And so those who try to insert Antiochus Epiphanes into Daniel chapter 12, verse 1, are ignoring the scope of the destruction of 586 BC. They are ignoring the scope of the destruction of AD 70, of which Jesus said, "For then shall be great tribulations, such as has never been since the beginning, nor ever yet shall be." And they're trying to say, they're claiming that Jesus was claiming that the time of Antiochus Epiphanes, that Daniel was saying the time of Antiochus Epiphanes was the Great Tribulation. Sorry, that denies history of 586 BC. It denies history of AD 70. It just doesn't work. That means that Jesus truly was saying, when you see what Daniel foretold, i.e. the abomination of desolation, Daniel foretold it. When you see it, you need to flee, because what Daniel foretold will be fulfilled in this generation. And it was. That's a temporal marker, ladies and gentlemen, that cannot be denied and cannot be ignored. I'm out of time. I'll see you on the flip side.